Hey guys, this is the first video of a series of videos that I'm putting together and I'm going to do on generational issues in the church. Something that I've thought a lot about over the years and through different courses or different readings that I've done. I think that this has really come up and been an important thing. There's a lot of different ways that churches can be divided within themselves, and one of the major ways in the United States of America that we see it play out is generationally, right? So generations are distinct because of a number of things that they go through. So what I want to do in this video is just give a general overview of the different generations, just really categorizing them as far as what they are, and then some of the things that do differentiate from generation to generation. So it'll be kind of a brief introduction, but then I'm going to use it as a launching pad in future videos to talk about more specific things and how they kind of come to life in the church, and not just come to life, but where we can come to blows, or where there can be dissension and disagreement and frustration between one generation and the next. All right, so we'll get there eventually. Okay, here's the different generations, and they're not hard and fast walls, but the first one are the traditionalists, or sometimes called the builders, and this is people born before 1945. So if you were born before 1945, you would be a builder or a traditionalist. The next generation is people born between 1946 and 1964, and those people are called the boomers, right? The baby boomers. People born between 1965 and 1980 would be Gen X, and people born between 1981 and 2000 are called millennials. So people born after 2000 are sometimes referred to as Gen Z, or that would be the emerging generation. So we know some about them, but that generation is still finding its way and taking its shape, so there's not a lot said about that. Now, there's some disagreements even within there. There's a lot of people that were born in between Gen X and millennials, maybe like 75 to 85, that have taken on a category they call Xennials, because when they kind of see the hallmarks of each of those generations, they say, well, I'm like myself, like I was born in 1982, I'd be technically a millennial, and there's a lot of things about millennials that I say I can relate to, but then a lot of things that just seem, that's not me at all, whereas I can see those things in Gen X, but not all of those things. And so there's a lot of people like me that are born in that time span that say, I'm kind of this, but not that. And right. So those are the Xennials. But either way, this is kind of the different generations. Now, what shapes a generation? There's a lot of things, right? There's like major world events. So whether it be something like World War II or Vietnam, so these like worldwide conflicts, or the bombings of 9/11, those are major things that happen in our world and shape the way that we interact with each other and the way that we interact with the world. Those are generational shaping types of things. When 9/11 happened, I was in college. People that were still younger and in school, those parents tended to be what we called like the helicopter parents, because they had this major thing happen on U.S. soil and made them want to keep their kids closer, right, and have more of a protection aspect of their kids. Whereas some people growing up, they grew up in a society where we weren't scared of perverts stealing our kids off the side of the road, or a bomb dropping and so you could go out and play, and the only rule was come in before dark. So there's generational things like that. We're influenced by media in a lot of ways. So think about a generation. The first generation I mentioned grew up with no TV, versus growing up with just programming like The Wonderful World of Disney and Leave It to Beaver, where soon the next generation was growing up with things like Bart Simpson and Married with Children. That is a huge difference of what you're being exposed to as like an 8 or 10-year-old, and then you get into other things like Friends and things like that. And even the quality of programming that people are being exposed to. Friends and Seinfeld were sitcoms that were all about friends hanging out, whereas some of the older shows were focused more on families doing family things. Think about something like college. A generation that maybe college was only for certain people and not very many people went to college, to going to where most people are going to college, but it's kind of equal. If you go to college, those people were making higher salaries, to where everybody's kind of funneled into college and comes out with huge amounts of debt and expected to buy houses right away. And so now people are graduating, they're 23 years old, and they owe $1,000 in college debt and $1,000 for their mortgage, and they don't have money for things that maybe their parents or grandparents had money for when they were young and starting their families and working. Or maybe those people didn't have money for different reasons. So those are just a handful of ways that that generations are shaped and how generations take form. And it's easy then to see how that can impact how we do church, how we view church, and what we expect from church. And one thing that's interesting about the generational thing is oftentimes what happens is the way that values pass down. So maybe I work a lot, and my generation has a high value on working and working hard. But I will say to my kids, oh man, don't work as hard as I did, spend more time with your family. And they will see, I didn't like dad working all the time. When I'm a dad, I'm not going to work all that much. I don't want to work that much because I want to spend more time with my family. And dad confirmed that. He said, don't work so hard, spend more time with your family. Now I grow up and I get a job, and my dad says, why don't you work so hard? I used to work hard. And it's like, because this is the value that you instilled in me. This is the thing that you complain about, I reacted to, or this is the thing that I grew up not liking and I reacted to. Now that's not my personal story, but that's the kind of thing where the values of one generation can shape the values of the next generation to be different. But then we can judge them for being different. So just a quick primer on, there are definitely different generations. We're shaped by a number of different factors, and we definitely see that take place in how we view the Lord's church. So definitely tune into the next several videos and see some of the key points that we see generational differences in the church at large and in our church, and what we can do to make those things better.